Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News, mofos. Hey, Chewy. Hey, man.
Good evening.
Oh, good evening to you, sir. And I love to count. One microphone, one hairy man. Two. Hang on. I always get this backwards. You're that way. How are you, man? Doing well?
Good. I have had an interesting day, which I gather we're going to talk about in a little bit, so I won't blow my wad, so to speak.
There's nothing I like more than seeing your wad be blown, Chewy, whether virtually across the internet or in real life in your dungeon. Either way, it's the thing I like most of all. How's your day? How's your day? Day's been okay? My day's been okay. I've been doing a bit of work.
Yeah,
gorgeous day in Dunedin today. And I took the dog to the park, and I bought a new ball for the chucky thing, and it goes like this. You go, and it goes about 100 meters. It's pretty cool. So, except unfortunately, $25 ball, $25, and my dog gets it and goes and tooth straight through it. So I'm going back to Animates tomorrow to say, hey, you know that $25 tennis ball basically you sold me? Yeah, we used it once. And it's pierced, so I'd have my money back, thanks. But the actual product, the way it flew and bounced, was freaking amazing. And such a cloudless day here in Dunedin today. It was beautiful behind the. I love those days where you get the solar gain in your house.
Oh yeah,
you can just kind of sit in the sun and sit out there, and it's beautiful. So yeah, no, busy. Actually, really busy at my place. What about you? What's been going on today?
Oh, just another work day. Pretty much still super busy. But I did see some of that nice day. It was happening outside of the windows. I sat inside.
When you get a lunch break, do you go out? Cause I know, I used to do this thing where I was working with and for people that I would always try and get out into the sun if it was a sunny day, if I could. When you get a lunch break, do you get outside, or do you typically just go hide out the back and go and eat your food?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. My previous job has just stayed inside the mall pretty much, so I have been trying to see how far I can get down George Street to get something different to eat and still make it back on time. I'm getting very close to patties and cream, which is exciting.
Patties and cream. Hey, speaking of George Street, this won't mean anything to most people who are watching, but obviously local body elections going on. One of the conversations that's happening is here in Dunedin, everyone knows about the Octagon, but on one side of the Octagon is George Street. On the other side is Princess Street. I always get confused between those two words. And then kind of north and south of the Octagon is Stewart Street. It's actually not north and south, but up and down and left and right. And part of George Street is going to be turned into a pedestrian zone where it's going to become a one-way street, 10 k's an hour for cars. And it's obviously one of the big murals. You go, oh, I'm for the pedestrianisation. Oh, I'm against the, you work in and around that region. From the actual retailers and businesses and people you see in the street, what's the vibe for that? Are people into it or not into it, or are they like me, which is a bit ambivalent? I'm a bit ambivalent about it.
It's real hard to I'd say it's pretty divisive.
Yeah.
I mean, myself, I'm jazzed for it. It's I've traveled a bit and I've seen how vibrant a shopping area can be when you don't have 2 lanes of traffic right up the guts of it. And we've never really had that in Dunedin. But every single conversation I have with customers, it seems to relate around how it's hard to find a park.
Right.
And every time I get that, I just kind of softly go, what about the 600 parks in the Meridian, in the mall?
Yeah.
What about the council car park behind us? Did you try there? All of these sort of things. And it's always no. So what that means is I wasn't able to park on George Street directly outside the shop I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where everybody's just got to push through all the negativity until it's done, and then hopefully people go, I get it now, and it'll be okay. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward, as someone that spends a lot of time, obviously, in that CBD area, I just want it to be nicer to be in.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, I just think, I mean, the reason I'm ambivalent to it is Dunedin is a much colder climate than many parts of the world, which are the examples to the pedestrianisation. They're like, look at Melbourne, look at San Francisco, these areas that are warmer and finer. And in Dunedin, like when I moved to Dunedin a decade ago, one of the first shocks I got was seeing fires still on in November and sometimes December. People warming their houses with fires on. So yes, that's the summary of the climate that can be in Dunedin from time to time. So I look at that and I think, so really a pedestrianisation in that region, will it be as effective as they think? But I'm sure if I was there for a coffee, I'd be like, cool. And if I was there looking for a park, I'd be like, you fucking assholes, I want a park. So that's why I'm kind of ambivalent. I can see both sides.
As I say to my customers, you should park in the Meridian.
Sure. So, but we're lazy, I want to park outside like Noel Leemings and duck in and duck out and whatever. But there are going to be parking. And look, this is very boring for everybody else, but it does kind of lead me into a conversation that I want to ask you about, which is local body politics. I just saw a tweet that you mentioned me, and we better bring this up first of all. So this is a tweet from David Cormack. Apparently, Mr. Luxon is going to be on the platform tomorrow. David Cormack says, "Oh, cool! Is Counterspin Media next?"
No, it's us. It's us. We're next. We're next. If old Luxo Flakes is willing to stoop so low as to go on the platform, surely viewing numbers don't come into it.
I like how and look, I mean, credit to them for using it for publicity, but tune into Sean's show 7 till 9 a.m. So for the whole 2 hours, they're not going to tell you exactly where he's on, but if you come for the whole 2 hours, you'll get him at some stage. It's like, yes, it's like, when you're getting Sky installed, we'll be there between midday and 6 p.m. So you're going to be home all day. Sheesh. So yeah, no, that's so that little bit interesting to see what happens. I don't think we'll get Mr. Luxon because, as we all know, I am banned from their Facebook page. A Facebook page I've never commented on. That's going around.
Maybe I should have a crack at it.
That's going around, actually. There's a particular mayoralty candidate who I'm banned from his Facebook page, and he said to me the other day, "You must have said something naughty on my page." And I said, I'm pretty sure. I could have a look. I'm pretty sure I've never commented on your page at all. But or have I ever been your Facebook friend? But I'm banned from his Facebook page. But speaking of local body politics, do you have some stuff you want to share about what's going on?
About what?
Local body politics. Are you going to talk about your day?
Yes.
Is that?
I think the pressure is starting to get to people.
Yeah.
Because a Facebook friend of mine put up, I don't know if you've seen Mark Baxter's Lefty Guide to Voting in the Dunedin election.
I have. Yes.
A very, very useful guide of just basically left, right, who's which, what do they vote for. He's done some really good work. There's a Google document going around. Anyway, a few of my friends have shared it around. I am
because we're raving lefties, just so people, in case you're unaware.
Oh well, no, not according to someone that you've interviewed. Richard Seeger is definitely writing that everyone I don't like is a fascist.
Far right.
It is no, he's the only true lefty.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh God.
That's because you've got that stupid vertical screen. Ridiculous.
No, I'm sharing the tab. I'm doing it correctly. Oh God, I don't know what I've done. Let me see if this works. See, oh, there we go. No, it's all going wrong.
Dude, what do you do for a job?
Technology,
you morons.
There we go. Look at Why won't it make the picture bigger? There we go. Okay, so a friend of mine shared this lefties guide, and my friend sort of goes, maybe Richard Seeger's in Voices for Freedom, maybe he's not, but he certainly agrees with all of their positions.
Right.
As you see there, that's me saying that he absolutely is in Voices for Freedom because he's been found out. He's on their mailing list and stuff like that.
Well, hang on, just pause for a sec. I mean, I'm not trying to be fair to him, but I could be on their mailing list if I signed up. Would that mean I'm in it? Just
there
for
is
clarity?
bit more to it than just a mailing list.
Like I get emails out from Counterspin. That's because I'm watching what they do. That doesn't mean I'm a supporter of Counterspin, obviously.
I was probably telling that a little bit soft. There may have been some investigations done in an electronic manner.
Just being fair.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And this is just literally me and a Facebook friend of mine talking about it, and then straight away Richard Seeger himself comes in talking about his blog, and then this here is. If you follow his footprint through Facebook, this is how he interacts with people. It's just personal attack and bullying. Now, I'm a stand-up comic, so I'm used to bullying. So I just decided the best way to respond was the fact that he got 319 votes last election.
Yeah.
It's 0.73% of the vote.
Yeah.
So maybe he should think about that. And now he's I think he's blocked my friend. All of his comments are gone. He's gone through and policed it. But the other one is Mr. Moncrief Spittle. Again, made a comment that I thought he had been in my workplace earlier that day. And he fully went on the attack. Where do you work? What did I buy? You never saw me. All of this sort of stuff. So there's some weirdos in our election, and they're certainly making their presence felt on social media. I'm not sure if it's a winning strategy. I really don't think it's a winner.
I mean, I was going to say 19 times out of 20. I don't know what it is, but 80% of the time, I don't interact with people on social media. I'll post something and things will go for it, and I don't typically interact. Sometimes I do, so people who are like watching me on a particular Dunedin web's Facebook page right now will see that I've been interacting with some things today. But normally, and I mean, you know this from Chewy, when we had an interaction on Twitter that went for days and days and days and days and days and days and days, Chewy's computer's going to cut out. There it goes. I made one comment. And for those of you who know the show and know what I'm talking about, you know how the literally hundreds, if not thousands of interactions that got. I responded to one tweet once, because typically it's like you're feeding the trolls a little bit. I mean, and to be honest, I can be a troll. Absolutely. I'm doing some trolling as we speak. Well, not as we speak, because I'm doing this, but at the moment I'm doing some trolling somewhere because it's a bit of fun and it makes me laugh. But the actual trolls who are doing it for more nefarious reasons, or they're doing it disingenuously, trying to make a disingenuous point, it's just easier not to feed them. We've had conversations about this, actually, because you lovely people over there, and I'm sorry we haven't acknowledged any of you guys tonight, beautiful people, all of you over there, from Politikiwi through to Simon, through to other names in there, conspiracy realist, to Rose talking about get a park out the front of the shop is my superpower, really pisses the wife off. All those things all the way through. G'day, how are you? Obviously I'm just talking about not feeding the trolls, Chewy, and obviously we've had a conversation around really in our chat, unless you become an asshole and offensive meaning you have offended my nature, sir, but mean like aggressively offensive is that's when you'll get booted. Other than that, yeah, we don't really mind. Don't feed the trolls, let people go for it. Typically what we're finding now is there's enough people getting in on things, evening Carl, getting in on things that people in the chat will typically sort out the trolls anyway, in general. But no, it's a very interesting time. And there are in Dunedin, there are 4 candidates. This is the thing about the Richard Seegers of the world and the rest of them. With respect to you, if you see this and you're still coming on with one of my conversations, there's likely 4 possible winners, and that's Aaron Hawkins, the incumbent. Oh my goodness, when the name just pops, Barker. I was thinking Sophie Barker is a reality. Jules Radich, and Lee Vandervis. They're the 4 who are basically I don't know if you call them all front runners. I mean, I've seen some polling from an official source about what it means for them, but they're probably the top 4 likely to get through. And the rest of you, bless you, are doing it for various reasons, but it'll be one of those 4. It'll be one of those 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I got my voting papers yesterday.
Do you know who you're going to vote for? Or have you?
Yeah, for mayoral race, yeah, I'm voting for 3 of them and leaving the rest unranked. And,
me too, I think.
and I'm just really just wading myself right through information about the people running for councillors. I've got 4 so far, and it's 5 out of God, so many people that probably shouldn't be there. But yeah, it's just, you sit down with something like Baxter's Guide and just go through and go, yep, all right, these guys agree with what I'm about.
Yeah, there was Pursuit said this. Baxter's Guide is a great analysis.
It's very good.
Should get him on. What I should do is I should get back when I finish all my mayoralty conversations. I'm not going to actually make my final votes until I've spoken to everybody, because that would be fair, right? Although I do know there's one person I'm not going to vote for. PatBritton.com. Go to the blog, you'll find out the story behind that. Maybe I'll get Baxter on at the end to do the analysis and wrap up. That might be
because I think he did this last time round as well. I found it very useful.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Hey, listen, I'm sure everyone's enthralled with the Dunedin focused conversation. You voting for the slime monster, though?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's going to need some context. In the Otago Regional Council, there is someone running as a sentient pile of slime. And they're just basically going on about synthetic fertilizer is good for slime, and slime monster is pro slime. So yes, absolutely voting for slime.
It sounds like the Bill and Ben party when they ran for national government.
What's the one in the UK, Lord Buckethead, or something like that?
Right. Yeah, not sure. But the Bill and Ben party got enough votes, because apparently you have to pay a certain amount of money to be involved in national politics, and if you get to a certain percentage, it might be 0.26 or it's something like that, a certain percentage, you get refunded the money, and they made it by like 0.1% or something, and they got their money back for when they tried to do it. So all right, is there anything else going on, sir, or should we get into the story about Nanaia Mahuta and her husband?
I have just found a picture of Lord Buckethead, so
go on. Let's see if you can sort your screen out this time. Go on, love.
The key is to use a Chrome tab.
Okay. I'm waiting. Nope. Look at that.
No, it's not working.
Yeah.
All right. I'll stop doing that.
Put the link in the thing, and we'll have a real man do it. Put the link in the private chat, and I'll bring it up.
Why does it not do that?
Because it doesn't love you. Are you putting it in the private chat?
I've got to learn.
And no dick pics tonight in the private chat, okay?
Was there dick pics?
There you go. Oh, that's Buckethead in the silver and Elmo over there.
Yeah, the absolute state of British politics. That there's 3 absolute cartoon characters up there. Yeah. Elmo, Buckethead, and this fucking
Adam,
guy.
Just before we move on, Adam's got some advice for you. That's to get a PC from the 2000s, not that 4860X that you're running at the moment. Get something else, mate. Right. Here we go. Look at those eyes. I get the sense from the conversation we kind of came into this with that maybe you don't think much of this conversation around Nanaia Mahuta's husband. We're going to talk about it, but are you thinking beat up? Is that where you're sitting on this? I got a very quick sense, so I'm not putting words in your mouth, because I'm not. If that's the case, I'm not there with you.
Yeah. No. Look, I'm going to take a middle ground here. I think it's a right wing beat up. I think it's quite hard to be like, the thing with Māori is that they're so interlinked. Like, I think if you were a prominent Māori, you could throw a rock and hit a family member,
right?
Sort of thing.
So hang on, just so people know, what you're saying is there was a board or a selection committee or a panel of 5 people, 3 of which were involved in the Mahuta family. That's what you're saying?
Oh, was it 3? Okay, I didn't. If that was the case, I didn't know. But yeah, it's. I think it's something that was thrown out there. I think people have latched onto it. It probably does deserve an investigation to make sure that everything's above board. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think it's a bit of a right-wing beat-up, personally, because she's got some pretty prominent portfolios, and it's a bit of targeted sort of let's see if we poke this spot and see what happens.
Well, let's have a look at the actual situation and see what people then think. You guys are welcome to mention this in the comments while I'm doing some reading. Chewy, maybe you can have a look through the comments and see if there's anything that you want to star there. So Nanaia Mahuta wants the investigation into handling of husbands' governmental contracts. The Public Service Commission has agreed to investigate the handling of government contracts given to Minister Nanaia Mahuta's husband, Gunnan Ormsby, I'm going to go with. Questions about contracts awarded to Ormsby's firm Ka Awatea Services, KAS, by 4 government agencies have continued to be raised in recent months. By the way, this is from stuff.co.nz if you're listening. The Commission on Wednesday confirmed in a letter to the National Party it would look into the handling of any conflicts of interest after requests from the party, Minister Chris Hipkins and Mahuta herself. It's concerned me for some time, even though I've declared conflict of interest and noted that they've been managed in accordance with the Cabinet Manual. These stories are still persisting, Mahuta says. Hipkins on Wednesday says the appropriate course of action, it was the appropriate course of action, although he did not see, quote, any evidence at all that any ministers have been involved in any of the decisions regarding Minister Mahuta's family. Hipkins was fired up about the matter in the House on Wednesday afternoon, interjecting during question time with an apparent reference to former Finance Minister Bill English's brother being provided government appointments. Let's talk about Bill English's family, shall we? Hipkins said, suggesting English's family were treated differently because they're white. Now, we'll keep going, but the first thing is, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's not a defense to say that's whataboutism, right? We don't stand for whataboutism. It's not defense to say you guys did it so we can do it too, right? So let's make that very clear from the start that whether this is right or wrong, true or false, if there's something here or not, it is not a defense to say Bill English did it. That's not a defense. That doesn't prove innocence or not. So it's. I know the House gets a bit argy-bargy, but let's be fair. That's not a compelling argument, Chewy. Shall we put it that way?
Yeah. No, I think that's a bit of a long bow to draw.
Yeah. All right, shall I keep going? Acting Prime Minister Grant Robertson said he had, quote, absolutely no evidence that supported claims that proper processes had not been followed. There is absolutely no suggestion that Minister Mahuta had done anything wrong, or indeed any other minister. National Party Public Service spokesperson Simeon Brown, your favourite, Chewy, your favourite and mine, said he was pleased an investigation was underway as there were serious issues needing resolved. Well, I guess that's the allegation, isn't it? He had twice written to the Commission seeking an investigation into possible conflicts of interest before Hipkins sent his letter. ACT Party leader, your favourite of mine, David Seymour, said Hughes should have launched a more fulsome inquiry, but he trusted the Commission to, quote, get to the bottom of this. When you have a government working group with, and this is where I got the number from, Chewy, 3 out of 5 members or the relatives, I guess it should be are the relatives of a minister, you've either got an incredible talented whānau or a real problem with the appointment process, he said. Now, again, to be fair, there are, and I desperately am sorry to use another sporting analogy to you, Chewy, but there are 3 Barrett brothers in the All Blacks, right? I'm not saying that because it's the number 3. What I'm saying is it is possible to have an anomaly where you have 3 of a family who are the best qualified for the job. That is possible. So to be fair again, we're being fair kind of with National before, saying it's not a good defence from Labour. But now to be fair to the working group, just because there are 3 members from one, and what does family mean within Māori? Whānau, iwi, hapu, what is it? I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't mean necessarily they're not the most qualified. Just like I think in the starting lineup this weekend, there'll be 3 Barrett brothers out of 150,000 rugby players in the country. So just to be fair, both ways.
And it would be my hope that parliamentary process is clear enough that that can be managed, right?
Yeah, you would hope so. But I mean, look, I'll come to the perception, because we often say perception is reality here. And there's a perception here, in my opinion, that's not very good. But we'll get to that in a second. Now, when we say perception is reality, we're also not saying necessarily that's the truth or that's accurate. But in politics, the perception of something to the voting public is the reality. So whether there is something going on here, there is something to be held accountable or not, the perception here is not good. So that whether there is or isn't something inappropriate, that's still to be determined. But the perception for Labour and for Nanaia Mahuta is not good. So the last little bit I highlighted was Mahuta has at times held associate minister portfolios, which gave her oversight of 3 of the departments that had contracts with her husband and had previously declared a conflict of interest as per. She had previously declared that she had a conflict of interest as per the cabinet manual. So Minister Mahuta is saying, I followed the book. I did it all properly. It's all above board. Now, then there's a question about perception. I've got some audio to play as well, which we can get to. But now that you've heard sort of the whole story again there, Chewy, do you want to jump in and offer anything on that?
Yeah, look, the fact that she's declared a conflict of interest for me is an indication that there's not something sneaky going on there. But yeah, I think when you're talking about perception and that sort of thing, that's what counts, right? I mean, you've got like the political obsessives like us and everybody in the chat here, but what's going to get the cut through to the voting public? They're going to hear that there's this potential. They're not necessarily like, what are they going to hear more, the accusation or the result of the investigation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the headline they're seeing today. But look, the other thing that's really clear is we also believe, and I'm saying we too, because we've had this conversation, that if someone is in a position of power, that can influence other decisions that come along under that. Whether it's something to do with, a sexual immorality thing, whether it's something to do with business, whether it's something to, so if you are in a position of power, let's say a minister of the crown, and there is a working group somewhere adjacent to your position, your influence of power may impact that working group, which is why I think that this is actually quite a bad look for Labour right now. And if it was me, it would be a really easy clear up. We can think about Judith Collins and her husband with the milk people and all that kind of stuff. And obviously there was something with Bill English. So this thing happens. Why don't they just put into the handbook, I'm sorry, immediate family can't get contracts from government agencies. And if your business is so big that you rely on government agencies, then maybe you can't have a family member who's a minister. That just would seem to clear all of this up immediately, and there'd be no conflicts of interest, because with a conflict of interest, even if it's declared, doesn't mean there's still not pressure on a group simply because of the power imbalance. And we know power imbalance can bring pressure. We know power imbalance can make decisions that someone makes not appropriate. So I think they need to make this within government cleaner. And I think no matter what they do, this is not going to look good for Labour, even if they are officially cleared. We talked about National the other day using particularly accurate sentences, that it wasn't like with Uffindell, it wasn't as the media reported. So they've officially kind of got past that, but it's still not a good look. So I think for Labour, they may officially get past this, but it's not a good look. And I actually think it's really, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of husbands, wives, sons, daughters, parents getting contracts from government where you have an influence in government. There is definitely a conflict of interest and a power imbalance there that I think is potentially dangerous.
Yeah, okay. I could be convinced on that. I mean, I don't like where this allegation has come from and how it's being used and that sort of thing. But I think the comparison between the two sort of investigations and we were talking about integrity and all of that sort of thing yesterday. I think it's some, I haven't done enough reading on it, to be honest. But yeah, I agree. The perception and the optics on it, potentially pretty damaging.
Well, on some level, although we have more information because, Christopher Luxon spoke of it, but in some level, what we're talking about with Uffindell is just perception as well, because we don't know the inner workings. Like, we've drawn some conclusions based on what hasn't been offered and what hasn't been said, but we don't actually know that. It is about what we're perceiving, right? It's perception. There is a perception here of an imbalance of power. There's a perception here of inappropriate action with family members on decision-making boards. Now, whether that's true or not, we don't know. I'm not making any accusations. We don't know, but the perception, especially in the eyes of the voter, is reality. So the eyes of the voter, I think many of them, not just, the National Party supporters will already be against it, but I'm not a National Party supporter. Oh, sorry. I let the cat out of the bag. But the perception's not good. Now, if there is some something's proven that's been something wrong has been done, like I was going to say immoral, it's the wrong word, and it's not necessarily illegal, but inappropriate done, against the handbook or whatever, then there should be consequences with that. But even if there's not, and they pick their words carefully, just like Christopher Luxon did, it doesn't mean they'll be in the clear. And it actually doesn't mean that maybe something didn't happen that shouldn't have happened. We've already talked about it. You set those terms of reference, you set the parameters of what the investigation is going to do. It somewhat puts the thumb on the scale and helps you get the outcome you want. Much easier, much cleaner, just to not allow family members to get thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, whatever the amount is, from a government agency that you have some power within. That's the actual solution here.
So would there be any potential negative consequences of that, though?
Well, there would be, but there are sometimes criteria in life that exclude you from doing things or being things. If you had a partner, Chewie, if your partner made $3 million a year from government contracts, right? You could either choose to be a minister in the Crown and they have to give those contracts up, or you could keep those contracts, your partner could keep those contracts, and you couldn't be a minister of the Crown. I actually don't think that's we all make hard choices. Look, for fuck's sake, we can't now start going, hard choices are difficult when we've just spent two years, 18 months saying people have been making hard choices around vaccines and stuff. I've been ardently pushing that through. This has been a choice. No one's been forced. Yes, it's been a hard choice. We can't now go, we shouldn't really make them choose for this. It would be inconsistent from me, and I think inappropriate. There are always going to be some things that exclude people from sectors of society. What I'm saying is, if you are connected to massive amounts of contracts from the government, I think that should exclude you from being a minister. Now, if you want to be an opposition MP, if you want to be a backbencher, if you want to be an MP, I think even there could be some kind of conflicts here, but fine. But I'm talking about being a minister. That should just exclude you. Make a choice.
Hey, I just want to acknowledge some of the chat that's going on. I might have used a phrase there that has landed very, very poorly.
Oh, I missed it then. What did you say?
When I referred to I guess the closeness of family with Māori.
Yeah.
There's someone in the comments suggesting that I was talking about incest. That is certainly not what was intended.
Well, I didn't read it that way.
Talking about the fact that Māori have a smaller population base.
Right. So you're basically saying Māori to New Zealand is like New Zealand to the world.
Yeah.
Like it's not 6 degrees of separation. It's like 1 degree of separation.
Just to absolutely clarify that. I could see someone really, really kicking off there, and I just want to reassure you that was not my intention. Probably a really badly used phrase. So I apologize there. And I guess that's kind of what I was getting at with negative consequences. In Nanaia Mahuta, we have a very, very strong minister. And I guess my question is, these people in the working group, are they doing good work? What's going to be the negative consequence there? Are we going to lose a really good minister who's right across her portfolio, or are we going to lose a lot of knowledge in that working group? It's a hard choice,
Well, but there are hard choices we make all the time.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Look, I mean, like, it's a little bit like, if you're the prime minister, if you've got stocks and that kind of stuff, it has to go into a blind account that you can't control. How come the prime minister has to put their stocks and bonds into a blind account that you have no control over, but a minister can still have a partner in the bed next to them at nighttime making decisions that financially advantages both people? Now, I said minister there because we could bring up Judith Collins, we could bring up Bill English. I'm not actually throwing this just at Nanaia Mahuta. I'm just saying ministers. Full stop. I think there's always a conflict of interest there. There's always a thumb on the scale to some level, and there's certainly always an imbalance of power. And I don't think that's appropriate. I really don't.
I think concern and investigation is it's just good government. It's just like, even if there's a skerrick of potential impropriety, yeah, cool. Call on the dogs. Let's have a look at it. But again, you've got
you might have just offended someone by referencing investigators with dogs. Like, what are you saying? No, that's cool. Yeah, I get it.
You've also got, like, there's people mentioning what went on with Judith Collins. But, you know, yes, there's whataboutism in there, but there's also don't throw rocks if you're in a glass house. I mean, that's politics down to a T, right?
Yeah. All right. So when I'm Prime Minister, Chewy, in the year 20, go fuck yourself.
Can I be the sporting minister?
You will be the minister and fart of sports ball.
I tell you what, if you thought John Key's 3-way handshake was bad, I will do something far, far worse.
And just the word docking comes to mind for some reason. I'm not sure why.
They won't want that Rugby World Cup back afterwards.
When I'm Prime Minister, I'm going to cancel contracts to families if you're a Minister of the Crown. And I'm going to make it real specific of immediate family. And I'm going to draw a line as to where that stops. And I think siblings, parents, and any siblings or parents by marriage. So there you go. I'm drawing that line in the sand. You can't do it. And then you're going to have to decide, do you want those big fat ass contracts or do you want to be a Minister of the Crown? Up to you. Are you voting for me? Who's voting for me? No one. No one's voting for me. Hey, let's get a little bit of video on this as well, just to get a gist of what's being said about it in the House as well, because the minister speaks to this conversation as well. So this is what's being said by politicians when they were in the House around the scrum.
New Zealanders have extremely high standards over how taxpayers' money is used. And
I mean, to be honest, though, this is where you like roll your eyes and go, yeah, this is your narrative and it's handy. The thing is, it's like, yeah, it's what you're saying is true technically, but you're just going to break it as soon as you're in about how New Zealanders handle their money. But yeah, we'll get through Simeon Brown and then we'll get to Nanaia Mahuta.
And so I wrote the letters to ask for an investigation to make sure that the conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest which exist were managed appropriately and the procurement processes were too.
Is it fulsome enough their agreement to look into this?
Well, look, I did ask for an inquiry. This is more of an investigation. To be honest, I think an inquiry would have more powers attached to be able to actually get that information and make sure it was as full and fulsome as possible. And so, look, ultimately, that's what I asked for. This is at least something which is going to look into these issues to try and get to the bottom of it, to make sure that taxpayers' money is being respected appropriately here in New Zealand.
It's concerned me for some time that even though I have declared conflicts of interest and noted that they've been managed in accordance with the Cabinet Manual, these stories are still persisting. I raised my concerns with Minister Hipkins verbally on the 12th of this month, and then wrote a letter to ask that he have a look at that. So I'm very pleased with the outcome. At least 3 of the government departments, it's evident that there is an inconsistent approach to the way in which conflicts of interest have been managed.
Oh, stand by. Buffering. Come on. What's going on? Come on.
Of interest have been managed by them. That is a matter at departmental level. That's why I'm pleased that the Public Service Commissioner is having a look at this.
Why do you feel like they were being targeted specifically for this?
Oh, look, as I say, there's all sorts of motivations, but I've been very clear every step of the way. I've been assiduous in declaring conflicts of interest. They've been managed appropriately in accordance with the Cabinet Manual. It's very clear that of all the issues that have been raised, I had no say.
Sorry about this.
Need to give your router a kick. Maybe get a router from the 2000s.
Shut up, Dick. Don't you bring that up. Anyway, look, we'll leave it there so we don't have to sit around. But Chewy, she does wrap up that part of the conversation talking about, hinting at, if not blatantly saying, that there's a racial issue to this. She talks about platforms where the comments are being made, the non-mainstream platforms. Obviously, she's talking about things like Rumble and Telegram and that kind of stuff. And I'll just respond by this, right? For me, it's about whether there has been impropriety here or not, right? If there has been, then there has been. If there hasn't been, then there hasn't been. I struggle a little bit with that's the rationale behind it, rather than the rationale behind it is just basically right wingers wanting to do it for whatever reason. And one of the reasons I struggle a little bit behind that's the reason behind it is Judith Collins. You know, it's not just happening to Māori, it's happening to other people. It's like I was talking to a particular Mayoralty asshole candidate the other day, and one of the things he said that makes him feel intimidating to other people is he's white. He used that phrase, and I'm like, but hang on, there's lots of other white people in and councils, and they're not seen as intimidating. So how is that attribute equal that thing? What I'm saying here is, how does this attribute you're saying equals the Dobbin as opposed to what's actually happened? And the only way we'll find that out, like if they come back completely exonerated and nothing to see here, then I say let's investigate that and see if that's the reason behind it. If they come back and it's muddy and it's murky and something else is going on, then that's the, I mean, what the rationale for people making the complaints, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. For me, it's like, has there been impropriety? That's what I'm interested in.
Yep. No, and look, I think that's fair. I want a squeaky clean government as much as anybody does. And look, if this highlights that the rules are inconsistent or not fit for purpose, or maybe they haven't been looked at since 1963, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But again, I think the comparison between, Ardern has said we need they want to be the most transparent government.
Yeah, of course.
Here is their opportunity to show it, and they can turn around and go, here's our investigation, and here's things like a term of reference or what we found out and why it happened and why it's okay or why it's not. And then you can draw your own lines between somebody else's investigation. Thank you.
Yeah. And look, Gareth got me. I have to cancel my whole thoughts around this because Gareth says, what about, is it whāngai, siblings or parents? What about stepchildren who are already ministers? Oh, I have to give it all up now. But the basic idea is you could get rid of these conflicts of interest pretty easily by not awarding contracts to family members, wherever you decide to draw the line. I mean, husband's a pretty close line. Because the thing about husband or partner is that not only impacts a family member, but it actually financially impacts you. Because if husband gets the income, then you as minister get the benefits from that income. That's very close. If it was son or daughter who live in a different part of the country, and there's one step removed. But partner, that means all of that money comes into your joint bank account, so to speak, and funds the cars that you guys probably drive. So that there is a definite out, and I think that would be easy to put onto the governmental books for everybody, and then you won't have these kinds of conflicts of interest anymore. And I think fair is fair. We always say walk and chew gum, and I think that this is a bad look, and I think that the government of the day needs to sort this out. And I don't think they should be awarding contracts, even if at the moment it's above board. I remember a tennis player once getting done for drug use, and she was done in the January, and the December, the drug that she got done for was legal to use. And then there was a change and it wasn't legal to use. And I always felt a bit bad for her because it was legal and then it did become, not legal within the confines of the Professional Tennis Association, a female tennis player. And I think at the moment this is legal, like within the confines of the handbook. Even if it is, the potential for conflict or the potential for the thumb to be on the scale or the potential for an imbalance of power being there should make this illegal. We should wipe the slate of it and not allow, maybe this is the line, not allow a financial advantage to directly affect you, the minister, i.e. into your joint bank accounts from a contract from the government. That's a pretty easy line to draw if there was nothing else. And that could be done like that.
Yep.
Boom. Anyway.
Yep.
Cool. So is there anything to mention from the texts that are coming before we go on to schooling?
No, it got a little bit nutty. There. We've got, I don't know if I call him a realist. Sorry, a regular, but conspiracy realist just went on a little bit of a tear, and Jimmy's were a little bit rustled, so I put him in the timeout corner.
Oh, have you?
We're sleepy time.
I was.
Yeah, so the chat has been pretty dominated by that, so I couldn't really see any good comments apart from the ones that you've already highlighted.
Okay. Let's go on to this next thing, because this next one's quite interesting. It's not really a political thing, but I'm interested from a parental point of view because I keep an eye on what's happening with schools and stuff. You know how schools have Decile 1 through 10?
Mm-hmm.
That's going away.
Yes, no, I was reading about this change. This sounds really good.
Yeah, it's a move to a new equity index, and let's just have a listen to News Hub and see what they say about it to give us a bit of a heads up.
Purerua's Ngātauni Park School.
Purirua.
At the moment, it sits at Decile 1, a measure its principal says is being used for something it wasn't designed for.
What it became was a stigma attached to schools, suggesting that because you were low decile, you delivered a lower quality education for kids, which was...
Let me explain it, and I don't think it explains it quite as bluntly as I'm about to say to you guys if you don't understand the decile system. So the decile system has to do with the wealth of the area the school is in, not the quality of the teaching within the school. So this principle is saying if you're a decile 1 school, it sounds like you're the crappiest school in the land, but it's actually to do with the value of the houses, the value of the properties, the income of the people around the school, the catchment of that school. So poorer, quote unquote, poorer areas are decile 1, rich and wealthy areas are decile 10. It doesn't mean the decile 1 school is any better or worse than the decile 10 school, although it would be fair to say that the decile 10 school is probably far better funded by the parents because it's in a wealthy area. So the decile system is set up by the wealth of the area, not the quality of the school. Sorry, Chewy.
I sort of dovetailing into that, and I think that was the idea, is that they took the surrounding area and go, maybe this school is going to need more funding, more support, more programs coming out of it than, say, the more, the school on the wealthy side of town and that sort of thing. But I definitely get the perception that people looked at that decile rating as a quality of school guide. Definitely used in that way. Yeah.
So they're going to get rid of the decile system, and the story will tell us more about what they're moving to. It's a equity index, they're calling it. Let's have a listen.
Absolutely untrue.
But that's all about to change. From next year, schools will move to an equity index model when it comes to funding, a more accurate system that uses 37 socio-economic measures known to impact education outcomes.
It helps us to make sure that we're really providing that extra support to those learners that need the extra support the most.
The government announced a $75 million boost for funding in Budget 2022, and that's just been divvied up amongst schools, with almost 90% getting a funding bump, including at Ngātauni Park.
Any funding's going to be very welcome to any school. We pour our money back into the kids.
So I was looking at this, and I haven't answered this question I'm about to ask Chewy, but I'm just teasing through what my process was. I was like, okay, decile 1 school getting more money, got to be a good thing. Decile 10 schools typically charge fees to their parents because their parents can afford it, so they are more funded. And I was thinking, right, I was going, great. Now what I want from this story is for them to tell me who is getting more funding and who is getting less, because there are some schools that are going to get less funding. And I was thinking, well, this is a decile 1 school, a poorer area, a less financially affluent area. If they're getting more money, perhaps the decile 10 schools are getting less money. Maybe that's what's going to happen. So this is the question I had at this point. I do find out the answer for you all, because unfortunately, News Hub doesn't give us that answer. But they do explain the system at the moment, what's going on.
The education we provide for them.
Good news too for Northland schools receiving an extra $223 per student.
We have been telling successive governments that we needed something like this to happen, and we're always poo-hooed usually by previous governments, and it's damn good that this one's actually put its money where its mouth is.
But while more than 2,000 schools look forward to an increase in funding, 269 won't, with 20 schools losing more than 10% of their funding.
We've ultimately increased the amount of equity funding going in by over 50%. So there's more equity funding going in, and that's why the number of schools that are actually seeing a reduction is very low. It would be much higher if we hadn't put more funding in.
They've got a year to work out how to manage that, but it's still, it's not good news for everyone.
A fraction of schools left to figure out how to cut costs.
I like it how he says a fraction of schools. Like 9 out of 10 would still be a fraction of schools. It would just be a lot. Now, a couple of things are happening, yeah? And so for parents out there, people want to know more about it. So this is my thought now. Like my thought after watching that article was, well, give me a list of the schools that are getting less. I want to know the schools that are getting less. And if it's like the wealthy schools in the area, then that would kind of make sense that it would be the decile 10s, if it's in the wealthy areas. And I can't find that anywhere. I've been looking around, I haven't been able to find that anywhere. And I did find, the one thing I did find to help me figure out what kind of schools would be getting less. The other thing, is there are some schools that are going to lose funding due to the rolls dropping. And because the rolls have dropped, the number of students there, they're going to need fewer teachers, less funding. So there's that sort of a natural attrition part of this. But I found this story on newsroom.co.nz, and it gave me an ability to kind of track down the schools who are getting more and the schools who are getting less without quite identifying them. Just this paragraph here says, but for 269 schools, many of them in southwest Auckland suburbs like Onehunga, quite an affluent suburb now. Onehunga didn't used to be, but is now. Mangakiki, same. Mangere, not so much. Otahuhu and Papatoetoe, South Auckland, their funding entitlements will be cut. And the biggest fall in school roles in a decade, which is what I'm talking about, means the ministry will fund the salaries of 351 fewer full-time equivalent teachers. So here's what I did, because I'm thinking of Auckland, and I grew up in Hillsborough, which is just across the bridge from Mangere Bridge, so I sort of know that area. Spent a lot of time in Onehunga, so I know that space pretty well. When it says Southwest Auckland, so this is what I've done, right? I've gone and found a list of schools ranked by decile. This is for Auckland.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, and so if you just think about this, Chewy, the brighter colors, red, orange, yellow, wealthier areas, right? The duller colors are sort of grays, browns, blues, lower decile, greens in the middle. You with me?
Yep.
So if it's the wealthy suburbs, it'll be all reds. It'll be the bright colors. If it's the less wealthy suburbs, it'll be the grayer, darker colors. And if it's somewhere in the middle, it'll be the green colors. So here is the map for Auckland, right? And they said southwest Auckland, which is down here, right? This is southwest Auckland. All I can see is grays and blues. There's no reds or oranges or yellows down here. There's Onehunga. There's an orange in Onehunga. That'll be Onehunga High, I suspect. That's quite a very good school. There's a few yellows in that area, but the southwest, Papatoetoe is down here. It's all the darker, grayer colors. So the thing that I now can't answer is what is the criteria for funding? Because the areas up here in the northern part of Auckland, look, you can see all through central Auckland and over the bridge, Devonport, there's lots of red there. There's lots of decile 10 because they're the wealthier areas. Over here is Mission Bay, Howick, there's Mission Bay up there, Howick, Pakuranga over this way. But down here, when they said specifically southwest, that's the region here, which seems grays and darker colors, meaning lower deciles. Now, I don't have the answer as to what that means right now, but the journey that I've just started to find out more about this is it's not the wealthy suburbs, according to Newsroom, that are going to be having their funding cut. It looks like it's the poorest area, well, one of the poorer areas, especially when it comes to Auckland. So I don't have any more for you. Yeah, I don't have any more for you for that, but I'm just following a logical path to find out, because what I thought obviously was Decile 1 school getting more money, Decile 10 getting less. That kind of would make sense, but that's not what Newsroom is telling us about the Auckland region. It's not a cover-all. It's not saying it's what it is everywhere, but it seems that that's not going to be the case here. What is going to be the case? Well, that's the ongoing conversation. To you, Chewy.
Oh, just while we were talking about deciles, I just thought I'd look at my old schools. See what they are. My primary school, Decile 2.
Right.
And high school was Decile 6.
Looking at my primary school. Monte Cecilia Primary School. There it is. It is Decile 4. So my primary school was Decile 4. Because I can do that too. I can just do that on here because I got to try and figure out where they are. I can go over here, which is Sacred Heart College will be over here somewhere. Glen Taylor. GI, because I was in Glen Innes. Actually, it'll be low because Glen Innes is not. There's Tamaki College, Glen Innes School. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to find it, am I? St. Paul's Cathedral. Anyway.
I mean, ultimately.
Oh, there it is. Sacred Heart College, Decile 8. Well, there you go. So that was my secondary school. Yep, sorry, you go.
A flash school.
Yeah, bro.
We just
Catholic schooling system, brother.
We didn't even have sports equipment. We just kicked rocks. No, it wasn't
explains,
that bad. I remember it not being a bad.
That explains a lot, Chewy. No sporting equipment at school. Anyway, sorry, dude. You got some comments that you want to share as well?
I don't want to play rugby with a rock that we found. Seems like poor choices. We got heaps of comments.
Yeah, go.
I think anything to do with education, right, is going to get people fired up because it's about the children.
Yeah.
Somebody
look after the children.
I'm just gonna sort of rip through here. We got Carl saying that the decile system ended up creating white flight in
100%
school choice and charter schools. We should send our kids to the local school and make them all amazing learning places. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, that was definitely a big thing up in Auckland, the school zoning. You know,
Yeah,
people
school zoning, 'cause
selling up and moving to a
Yeah.
zone for a better school.
Probably the best example is Auckland Grammar. People would buy houses in the Auckland Grammar zone purely to get their kids into Auckland Grammar. That happened a lot, though, through all those central Auckland sort of secondary schools in particular. And then people would buy properties, like wealthy people, and then make them rentals. And then they'd use that address as their rental to get them into a school. So, yeah, no, that was white flight was hugely a real thing. Whereas then those schools, certainly since maybe the 90s, started attracting like rugby players and stuff for their first 15s from less wealthy schools and dragging them across. But yeah, white flight was a very real thing. Happened through the 80s and 90s. I was at school kind of 80s, 90s, and it was certainly a phrase I heard then. So it was happening then.
Rose says the idea is okay here, but it's a distraction from the fact that standards have dropped overall with NCEA. We got Christina saying, I went to school. I went to that school.
Oh, cool.
Talk about the school in the story there.
42, wasn't it? Yep.
Yep. Leon here says, I'm all for equitable outcomes, especially for our most marginalized. Two thumbs up on that for me.
Sacred Heart old boy right there.
Yep. If the system's not working, let's try and make it work. Because it guts me. Just there's a school up the road from me with a lot of challenges. If it means that they get more funding and those kids get a better education, I can't knock it. I really can't. I just I hope it happens, right? Ben Munro, the idea is a good one. It's based on actual inputs into the school as measured through a number of inputs. It ain't the solution to all education problems, but it's part of a journey.
So what Ben's saying, I guess, is it's part of the funding solution. And what Roe was perhaps saying is looking for an educational solution. They're probably two different things to be looking at. But doesn't mean either of those people or those comments are wrong, but they're probably two different conversations. Throw those ones up.
Does this include private schools?
I don't. Well, do private schools get funding? I went to Catholic school, right? Catholic secondary school, and they call that an integrated school, which means it gets some funding from the government and parents pay some amount. My understanding is private schools in general, that's why fees are like $3 or $4 or $5 grand a term because they don't get any funding from the government. So I'm not 100% sure.
Minimal funding if they get any funding at all, and I think it depends on the syllabus that they're teaching.
Integrated schools get funding from the parents and from the school. Public schools get funding from the government. Although having kids going through public schools, there's a lot of fees. I mean, you're probably finding a grand a year for your kid at public school as well, even though it's a free education. Not complaining, just observing. So I'm assuming, therefore, following that path, private school must be fully funded by parents.
Yeah. And Political Kiwi here saying, in theory, the higher decile schools already get more funding.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Isn't it funny? All these people jumping on the conversation around education. Look at you guys, eh?
Yeah. I mean, as I've said before, I don't have kids. I don't have a dog in this fight at all. But what I think is a universal truth is well-educated kids go on to do better things, have better lives, and we should all be about that. So, yeah. But the other thing, and playing devil's advocate here, is this a really cuddly feely story about a Labour pouring money into schools, which everyone knows that it needs? And as you said, the devil could be in the detail here.
Yeah, I want to know why. I mean, to show that photo image again, and we don't have the data on what exact schools, but I want to know why, according to Newsroom, the area down here, I mean, look, there's north, there's south, there's west, there's east. So southwest would certainly be this area. And they mentioned Papatoetoe, which is right here, that it seems that some of these schools are getting. Now, are they getting less funding because their roles have dropped and that means they're having fewer teachers and that's it? Because if that's it, then that's not such a big deal. If they're funding them, I don't know, let's say a teacher earns 80 grand. If that school right there, what is it? Let me just highlight it. If Papatoetoe West School is getting $250,000 less funding, but that's because they need 3 fewer teachers, that's not going to change the outcomes for the for the kids.
Yeah.
If that's so that's what we still don't know. But I do find it interesting that when they identify Southwest Auckland as the one of the areas in Auckland getting less funding, that's not the wealthy part of Auckland. So it's not the wealthy schools who are losing funding, according to that one example. It's the lower decile schools.
Yeah. And before we move on, I've just got one other comment that I want to chuck up here from Arton. It's great that schools from poorer regions might get more funding, but children who go to school hungry or live with the trauma of poverty, and I guess the other traumas that go along with that as well, they're still going to struggle to learn and get ahead in later life.
Sorry, that laugh was really inappropriately timed. It wasn't.
It was. It was super weird.
No, because I was reading Rob's comment below it that made me laugh. I'm sorry.
Oh yes, and we'll put that up next. But look, I just want to highlight how important schools are into solving this problem.
Yeah,
they're a community hub. You know, their jobs and their roles sometimes go way beyond what a school is, like the nuts and bolts of what a school is for.
Yeah.
You know, if they can keep their whole community together, they're often the first tripwire of something going really wrong in a family and that sort of thing. So it would be my hope that those schools with this funding can do more for the communities around them. And that's got to be a big part of it.
Yeah. Again, apologies for the ill-timed laugh, but how could I not?
The burp.
No, I don't apologize for that. I've also farted in the studio twice tonight, but that's another thing.
Rob Burney, again, I'm not liking this fucking narrative that's coming out.
Dude, you're the one that started the narrative.
Hey, look, I played sports. I did sports ball. I played softball, and I played the soccer in my youth.
Softballs, maybe.
It's just I did not give a single fuck about rugby. And cricket is the most boring sport known to man. So there's that.
We had this conversation. You know how sometimes you have this conversation with your partner and something comes up and you go, right, that's going in the divorce file. Or you go, if I'd have known that before I married you, I would never have married you. I kind of feel a bit about sports and that with you, Chewy. It's like, if I wouldn't have married you if I'd have known all this about sports before we started doing this.
There are good sports and there are bad sports, right? A good sport is one that you can play by yourself or with a friend while drinking. So pool and darts, excellent sports. Bowling, temper bowling, we go in there.
WRC? WRC while you're drinking?
WRC. I hadn't considered it, but yes, as long as WRC has cup holders, I guess that would be very amusing as well.
Could you imagine that? It's like this car is strapped down to be as light as possible, and there's a big fucking super gulp thing right there. Just
See, now we're talking. Now we're making memories. But yeah, cricket, you know, fucking the only good part of cricket is when there's the tea break and they bring the drinks out on a little remote controlled car or a golf buggy or something. I've always thought that rugby could be improved with the addition of landmines.
Yeah.
Let's keep it interesting.
That'd be good.
But hey, Jesus had ideas that the world wasn't ready for, and that's something that we share.
Put up Rose's comment about fidget spinners. I'll show you something before we go on for the last thing.
Oh no!
So I used to do a lot of conversations with people in studio before COVID, BC before COVID, and I have these things in my studio. They're all little fidgety type things, and I used to have them. I always have them on my desk, and then they were always there for the guests because I know I'm someone. You probably notice I do this. You'll have noticed. I see this here. This is a little strap. This here is a little strap that's it's for the microphone, and it's got Velcro. And I'm forever putting this between my fingers like this because I tutu with things. That's what I do. So I had these things, and I can't give this to Chewy right now to roll this. But see, I've got these little gadgets that I do, and I've got several of them. There's this one here as well, and you just can play with them. And so I'd be speaking to
hey, I know what that is.
John Toogood from Shehad, and he'd be picking up. This is one of my favorites. You watching this one? You spin it. Can you see it?
Looks like a hand grenade. Why have you got a hand grenade? The other one looked like anal beads, and now you've got a hand grenade.
You can't see it quite so well, but if you spin it, it does this thing where it looks like it's drilling into the ground.
Oh my god, it spins.
Yeah, it looks like it's coming up out of the phone. So when I'll deliver Chewy one of my fidget spinners for when he's bored, because I'm using a sporting analogy for the 7th time that night. Fair enough. They are not anal beads. You absolute.
They are
dirtbags.
absolutely anal beads.
Well, hang on. There's no they're joined. How are you going to get that up your asshole?
Yeah.
There's
I'm
no
sure
start or finish.
I'm sure you. I think you're just throwing us off. There's a knot in there somewhere, so you know it doesn't look like a string of anal beads.
I don't like you anymore. Hey, let's talk. This is where everyone will now turn off, and you and me, Chewy, will find this the most fun of the whole night, because we're going to talk about radio. And we're radio's at right now.
Yeah.
Because we often talk about, commentating on the commentators. And we've actually done it tonight. There was a clip I was going to play for that one about Nanaia Mahuta, which was a conversation with Simeon Brown on News Talk ZB, but we never got to it because we played the stuff clip instead.
Actually, just before you go on there,
yep,
Simeon Brown's 31.
Yeah, 31 going on 14 from the looks of his photos.
Yeah, that's the thing. He could be anywhere between 14 and 31. He's a weird little dude. Anyway, carry on.
And a little bit of this for me, at least, and I imagine for Chewy, is keeping an idea on where people are getting their information from. And what's just happened today is the latest radio research has been out. And I think we talked last night, Chewy, I think you brought it up, didn't you, about how News Talk ZB is the biggest station in the country, and it's the place that they only own. What is it? That's the only place those people get their information from. They don't visit any other places. It's just News Talk ZB. And I thought that dovetailed quite nicely into a conversation about how big are they? We should look at it, how they're doing. And for me, at least, I'm really interested in Today FM, because to me, Today FM, from someone who's been involved in talk radio for probably in total for 10 or 12 years, maybe, of my 20 plus year radio career. Sorry. I sometimes think in the back of my head, what a dick you're being right now, and it makes me laugh, and then I look like more of a dick. Is I love the ethos of Today FM, right? They have an idea to try and I don't want to say be Radio New Zealand, but kind of actually be more of a providing content for more groups of people, not just right-wing lunatics. And is that going to work? That's the big question, though. Like someone has said before, that, if they're trying to be Radio New Zealand, which I'm not saying they are, right? But if they were, then what they're offering is Radio New Zealand with adverts. We've already got Radio New Zealand without adverts. It's called Radio New Zealand. So I don't suspect they're trying to be that, but they're certainly trying to be not News Talk ZB. Like Radio Live, when it came out, was trying to be News Talk ZB. The people who ran Radio Live were actively saying, conservative talk is the way of future, trying to compete with fucking Leighton Smith, who was the king of that world. No matter how much you love or hate his politics, he was the master of talkback. And so they tried to take on board ZB head on and failed. Whereas Today FM is trying to almost do a different product in the same word. It's almost, I haven't heard them say this, but it's like, you have a rock musician doesn't really compete so much with a country musician. Yeah, they're both playing music. Yeah, they're both trying to sell albums, but they're a different audience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's absolutely basic marketing, right? You can't go, like, if you're going to do talk radio and that sort of thing, you look at how dominant News Talk ZB is. Don't provoke that fight. Find out what isn't being serviced, and there is a big gap between News Talk ZB and RNZ.
Yeah,
and I would listen to something in the middle. I would get a little bit angry sometimes, and I would get a little bit like, yes, that's a good point sometimes.
I actually wonder if what Today FM should actually do is actually go left. Like, I wonder that. I mean, like, actually, I sometimes wonder, like, I'll tell you a story. Everyone sit down. Story time with Pat. Sit down, get comfy, story time. When More FM started up, they did a whole bunch of research around what we should do and what we should call this place. Surveys of people. What do you want to hear? What do you want to say? What kind of music do you want? And they ended up with being kind of middle of the road. That was how they phrased it, right? This was well before my time of working there. But they thought middle of the road is what they want. And so they actively started selling themselves as middle of the road music station. And everyone went, fuck off. I'm not middle of the road. I'm extreme. I'm on the edge. I want this.
I've got cool taste.
Yeah.
I'm individual.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly right. And so I do wonder that kind of middle ground sometimes, it's a jack of all trade and master of none. Now, again, I've got to be really clear. I've got no knowledge of what's happening behind the scenes today. It's the things that I'm hearing and reading and seeing. And I wonder if they had actively made a choice to go left and actually be the opposing view to ZB, they might have found a demographic more easily. Now, that doesn't mean they haven't, but I just wonder about that, and if they actually actively have done that. Like, you tune in, like I listened to a particular commentator on there using the word woke like 4 times in one setup, and so it was like, you can see what that person's trying to attract. And look, from being a talkback host, sitting in front of a phone bank and no one phoning in, and you're getting to the end of your setup, you're like, fuck me, how do I get these phones to ring? Or else I just got to talk for the next 50 minutes. So there's no criticism. Sometimes you do what you got to do to get people on the phone when you're in that position. Because it's not like music radio. You don't just put on a song and do a 3-minute break and put on a song. You're it. You got to do it. So I'm there's no criticism. I'm just wondering out loud how Today FM's doing, which we're going to find out in a minute. And if it's working, if it's not, what's the plan? It's probably a 10-year plan for them. And if they had have chosen to go hard left or even just center left, as opposed to sort of opening it up to a lot of people, and what would happen? I just wonder. That's all. Although I'm talking a lot, aren't I? Although in saying that, when you look internationally, typically progressive radio doesn't work. Conservative radio does, and I think that's because conservatives are too stupid to figure out how to listen to Spotify, and so they listen to the radio. Whereas progressives and intelligent people on the left have multitudes of inputs. Whereas stupid conservatives just go, oh, I know the radio AM. And that's all they know. And that's why they're big. I'm obviously being facetious. Okay, let's have a look. So these, did you like my impression of a conservative there? So these are results out today. And really, to be honest, I don't know about YouTube, but I'm really just interested in the talk brand sort of thing. So you can see Newstalk ZB is still dominant, number 1 in the country. This is just everybody. All 10 plus means everybody. 14.7%, but a drop of 0.5%. It's neither here nor there, to be honest. The whatchamacallit of difference is probably 3.5%. What is that called? I can't remember what that word is when you have a deviation for accuracy. It's funny, I can remember the word deviation, but I can't remember the actual word for that, what that deviation is. It's 14.1%, down from 15.2. Today FM, 1.7%, down from 1.9. Now, it's their second book. It's actually really their first and a half book, because the last one was a mix. I don't know what they'll feel about that. I know if I was a host on that thing, I'd probably be a bit disappointed. Be like, oh, I get it. We're just starting, but 3 would have sounded so much better. Margin of error. Thank you, David. Margin of error was what I was talking about. Going to the numbers of, this is the breakfast shows. Again, Newstalk ZB, 20.3%. Now that's fucking massive. That's 1 in 5 people. You think about that. Look at the number of stations. 1 in 5 listening to Newstalk ZB. So that is the definition of
what it
Goliath.
doesn't mention is that all of these people eat mashed up glass for breakfast.
And Today FM with Tova on a 2. Was on 2.1, so basically is held. I mean, I guess if you're starting something new, if you could hold where you are, pretty much, it's probably a good result. I'm looking for the number of people actually listening. Newstalk ZB, where are you? You are there. 700,000 people around the country, down 20,000 people. Today FM, 115,000, which is for them down 20,000 people. So losing 20,000 out of 720,000 is margin of error. Thanks, guys. Maybe, I don't know. But losing 20,000 out of 136,000, that's not so much to be excited about. And then when you look at the actual number of people listening to breakfast is all that really matters in radio, just so you know. The other ones do matter, but you make probably half to maybe 3/4, 2/3, I don't know, of your money off the breakfast show. Newstalk ZB, 472,000 people listening, down 30,000. Today FM, 62,000 people listening, down 6,000. So they both lost maybe 8-10%, give or take. Sort of less than 10%. So that's an interesting statistic. Now, what's also interesting is how the companies then spin it. Now, when you're the number 1 show and the number 1 station in the country, there's not much spinning that has to happen. This is a press release from Newstalk ZB. Newstalk ZB and the Mike Hosking Breakfast continue to dominate the New Zealand commercial radio ratings. Hosking has the biggest breakfast audience across the country with more than twice the audience share of its next competitor. GFK Commercial Radio Survey results released today show. Hosking's show had 472,000 listeners and also the top rating podcast in the whole country, boasting 925 million monthly downloads and 104,000 monthly listeners.
It's not that I'm angry, I'm just disappointed.
Well, then we go on to, and like I've said before, you can use your results for anything. It talks about how ZM is number 1, 25 to 54, and this group is number 1 for this area, and this is number 1 for people who sit backwards on the toilet. And they break it down into whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And then MediaWorks' spin, their kind of thing is this, and it's a really interesting dynamic because MediaWorks is the biggest radio group in the country. Newstalk ZB is the biggest radio station in the country. So MediaWorks' pitch is this: MediaWorks has comfortably retained its position as the country's leading commercial radio network. The latest commercial radio survey, MediaWorks has an audience share of 54.4%. In addition, has more than 2.44 million people tuning into its radio brands every week across New Zealand. The director of content said, "We're happy with our result today. We've seen some great gains across our brands, particularly in Auckland. We all know the power of radio when Kiwis are communicating. So it's great to see MediaWorks has 5 of the top 6 music stations at both breakfast and drive." That's a pretty massive margin for advertising. Yeah. So MediaWorks is saying we're the biggest station, we're the biggest group in the country. And if you come and spend money with us, we will spread that across all of our stations and you'll get to more people. NZME is saying we've got the biggest station in the country. And if you come and spend here, you'll get more bang for your buck with one group. And that's kind of the radio ratings breakdown. Chewy, story time with Pat's kind of wrapped up, but it is interesting to see that ZB is still dominant and that kind of right-wing echo chamber is still dominating the dissemination of information via radio. Chewy,
I will never forgive MediaWorks for killing Channel Z.
Yeah, I agree. When I was at Moore, but I've told you this before. You know why Channel Z started up, eh?
Yeah.
Have I told you this?
Go on.
Channel Z started up because More FM had too many ads. Too many people wanted to advertise on More FM and they needed an overflow. That's why Channel Z started up.
Fair enough.
So,
and then they
but
just
I agree.
Kind of let Coleman run wild with it.
James Coleman on Channel Z was outstanding.
Channel Z was what got me into broadcasting, and Bomber Bradbury at the time, although he has turned into a rather interesting unit. Fiona in the chat has this question: what about the platform? As that seems to have heaps of people listening on the app or Facebook. If you look at their likes and shares, they're huge compared to Today FM, which is what I listen to. What do we reckon? They wouldn't feature in that survey at all.
No. Well, they're not radio station. They're an internet. Yeah. They're basically us with $3 million of mummy and daddy's business, mummy and daddy's money. Basically,
that'd be nice.
Working on it. Yeah. Well, by the way, if you won that 23 million last night, give a call.
give me now.
No. Look, the answer to your question is they're doing very well on Facebook, on those kinds of places, and part of it is they've found their constituency, and their constituency is QAnon believing right-wing conspiracy lunatics, and you can see that within their broadcasts. Anything that ever touches on those sorts of things gets a massive cut through and a massive push. Anything else, let's say Marty Devlin. I listened to 2 clips from Marty Devlin today off the platform because he was talking to what's his name, Campese, former Wallaby. That's a rugby player. Did I listen to 2? Or maybe I listened to 1. So I listened to it, but the number of plays on YouTube for that clip was, I think, in the hundreds. The time that he talked to like Chantal Baker or the QAnon people, it's in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. So they're doing really well in getting clicks and likes, but I would suggest, might sound a bit arrogant, but I would suggest they have a very defined audience that will be hard to grow because that audience of QAnon, far right conspiracy theory. Remember, Sean Plunkett has a problem being described as right, but when I talked to him, he described himself as the opposite to the mainstream media, the counter to the mainstream media, which he classifies as left-wing liberals. So therefore, if he is the opposite to the left-wing liberals, he defines himself as right-wing. So that's what the platform is.
I think the other thing that, like, let's just pretend the platform was a radio station that was involved in the survey. I don't know if anybody in the chat has ever seen the radio survey book that they give to people to generate these numbers. It's about an inch thick, and there's little boxes you got to tick for basically every 15 minutes of consuming media. It is hard work. And that is hard. Whereas the platform's listeners, as I said, eating paint chips and wearing helmets all day and licking windows in the evening, it's much easier to hit the like button on Facebook.
And can I say one other thing?
Fill out your radio homework.
Like, maybe more seriously, that audience is never going to allow themselves to be tracked. They would never tick a box that says, I was doing this at this stage and you can store this in your database. So I actually think that probably you'd find they do very poorly, because I would that audience that are listening to them wouldn't want to participate in a massive survey for 12 weeks that tracked their every movement, in my opinion.
Because of the brainworms.
Yeah, and because of the, that would mean the government would be watching them after they hand in their books and stuff. Look, I mean, credit where credit's due. I mean, they're bigger than us. Like that's cool. But, they're not that much bigger. They're not that much bigger when it comes to YouTube. They've got about 8,500 subscribers. We've got a couple of thousand. They've had $3 million driven into them, allegedly. I haven't had change out of a 20 yet. So more power to them. They're bigger than us. We can't compete with them in that way. They have a constituency. It's a constituency I wouldn't want and don't want. And it's going to take us a really long time to grow to have. I look forward to the day we can punch down on the platform, and it will happen. There will be a day where we will be punching down on the platform because we will surpass their numbers. You heard it here first.
Patreon check. How many patrons have we got?
Oh, shit. I don't think we've had anyone new today, but
no, this is important. I'm going to run the math.
All right, here we go. All right, we are at 20, and we're at $250 a month.
Okay, so we're going to need to pump those numbers up. So with our 20 Patreons, we need to open a new Patreon tier. And we need everybody
3 million
Patreon now to just resub in. Like, if you've picked 5, that's great. But we need you to resub into the new one that we'll create later on tonight for $15,000.
Okay, so we just put us 3
on the
zeros
same level as the platform.
3 zeros on the end of all of these.
That's an easy fix.
250,000, 100,000, $50,000
out of each of our 20 Patreons. We will have the same funding as the platform, and we're going to take them down. Just saying. Yes. Paul's got the idea. We're going to take a note from Tamaki, and we're tithing now.
So who's the bishop? You or me? You can be the bishop, and I'll be the priest. Is that what we're going to do?
The bishop said the priest.
Said the bishop the priest.
Yeah, I don't know. You.
I think. Hey, look! Before we get banned off YouTube, I think we should just whoosh that conversation. Because I mean, YouTube has earned us about $70 so far. So cha-ching, baby, getting there. And church on Friday night, says Ro. And Adam wants us to bring the beads back. Oh my god,
Bishop Brittenden. There you go.
I can't. Well, I did grow up Catholic. I grew up Catholic. And Chaplain Chewy. So like, what we need is the ability.
Choir boy.
We need to. I was a choir boy, but I was never fiddled with. I think I'm the one that got out. I was an altar boy. I never got fiddled with. Yeah. I think I was the one that got out. It's true. I was. I
like that you said the one.
Yeah.
No one else did.
No.
You ran. You were the fastest one.
No, I wasn't fast. I had this beard this size when I was 7, and I look too old. Look, okay, we are stopping this conversation now.
This is getting real dark.
We are stopping this conversation now. All right, team. Hey, thanks for joining us. It's been good to be with you again tonight. Have no idea what's happening tomorrow night. I thought about trying to do something around should we turn into a republic or not. It could be a nice Friday night conversation because it's appropriate at the time, but we'll see what happens. Politiki was also an altar boy that didn't get fiddled with. I gotta get that as
we're up to 2.
I wish we had the availability. Like, Chewy, I think you should start a business in your sex dungeon of printing t-shirts. Wouldn't it be great right now just to tomorrow go, let's print a t-shirt that's Bishop Brittenden and Chaplain Chewy. Put it on the Patreon, done, sold. You know, the one that the altar boy, the one that got away. You know, it would be good. It would be good. Maybe one day. All right. Thanks, Joey. Thank you, team, for joining us tonight. We will be back tomorrow night from 10 p.m. for something. Who the hell knows what? So we'll see you then. Unless we're being taken off the internet for making inappropriate jokes. I'm actually allowed to, because I grew up Catholic, so I'm allowed to say that. It's not appropriation. That's fair, isn't it?
Oh, don't include me in this.
I'm allowed to make those jokes.
I don't need Pope level heat coming after me.
All right. See you, team. We'll see you tomorrow night from 10. Hooroo.